Bryan goes by Mr. Carlsbad, right?
He calls me that. It's a nice name he gave me, and it's apparently has stuck.
We'll let him do it.
Yeah, why not? It's fine.
It's his show.
We'll let it happen.
Okay, all right. So Mr. Carlsbad in the house. Debbie Fountain is here today. Now, Debbie, tell us about what's your position with Carlsbad Housing.
I'm the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services, and so we have programs related to affordable housing, volunteer programs, code enforcement, grant programs, and rental assistance. We do all that through our department.
Okay, so you kind of know everything that's going on in Carlsbad Housing.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm assuming, Bryan, that's the purpose.
That's exactly right. When I knew I wanted to talk, and in issues of housing in Carlsbad, and it's becoming more of a concern as far as affordable housing and infill and all those things. I'm like, well, who can I reach out to for that? And I found Debbie, and I'm like, this is exactly who I want to come on and educate your audience about what's happening. So I'm really grateful that she agreed to come on.
So tell us, I mean, like, what's the big burning issue right now in Carlsbad Housing? Is it the lack of inventory? Is it that we don't have the right kind of inventory? Is it that builders are having a hard time finding places to build, or all of the above?
Pretty much all of the above. Land costs are high because it's a coastal city. Plus we also, sort of basic economics tell you when you have a lack of inventory and a high demand, you have high prices, right? So we have high housing prices, we have high rental cost, and that's hard for those that are low income to be able to find something that they can afford. So they're getting pushed out of Carlsbad. Their job may be in Carlsbad, but they're having to go look elsewhere for housing because of those dynamics. And so what we're working on, a couple things actually. We've had an affordable housing program for low income households since '93. We have an inclusionary housing ordinance that basically says all developers building housing within the city have to build 15% of their housing affordable to low income. And we've been doing that since '93. We're close to about 2,500 units that are restricted, either rental or for sale for low income households. And then
is that close to the amount that's needed? I know there's like a California law, and most of the areas in San Diego County don't have the required amount. And how is Carlsbad doing in that regard?
We're not close to our numbers either, and so we just finished adopting our housing element, which is required by the state of California. And the state of California, basically puts out a number and says this is how many we need within the state of California over the next 10 years of your housing element. And you city then are going to get a share of that, and so then they go through the local planning agencies, which in San Diego is a San Diego regional, San Diego Association of Governments. Thank you. And so they then divvy it out basically to all the cities and say, okay, you have this much available land that could be built on, here's your requirement. And so they're called our regional housing needs assessment numbers. And so just for for San Diego, they have like this big number, and then they break it down. So Carlsbad itself has about a 5,000 unit requirement over a 10-year period of our housing element. So our current housing element is good from 2010 to 2020. And so within that it says you need to produce 5,000 units within your city. And then it breaks it down by very low, low, moderate, and above moderate units. And so about half of them are at above moderate, and then the rest are kind of divided up between very low, low, and moderate. So our very low requirement, we have about 910, 912 units required for very low, about 700 for low. And so those are what our programs are focused on in our department, and because the market then does the above moderate, not doing such a great job on the moderate, but our programs are set up for that low because that's the hardest group to really get affordable housing. And
to clarify some definitions as far as affordability, affordability is 80% of the San Diego median income. You can't make more than that in order to qualify, and that's if you're purchasing a home. If you want to rent a home, then your income can't exceed 70% of the median. So I mean, it's tough, for people. That's why, and this is a staggering statistic that Debbie shared with me. 70% of the people who work in Carlsbad don't live in Carlsbad.
Interesting.
So you think
I
about
thought that was part of the spiffiness of it. Is like you can do everything,
live and work, right?
Yeah.
And it should be, and we are producing a lot of good high income jobs. We are, but housing has just become such an issue. And you think about, you know, we have a lot of tourists, a lot of tourism, right? Heavy service as well. So while you do have the engineers who are able to afford, you have the people who are the waiters and the waitresses, the people who teach our kids, the people who fight our fires, the people who, you know, work for the police department. How many of them, if they're a single income, how many can afford to live in the city they serve?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. Is there any kind of programs for people like that?
Well, those are the ones our programs are trying to reach out to. So just to put it in context of like a dollar amount, if you're a household of four, say you have a mom and a dad and 2 kids, and the dad, you know, is working at, you know, professional level job, for low income, that income is $63,750. So anybody underneath that would qualify. And when you look at the average median income for Carlsbad specifically, it's $87,416. So, and that's high. That's one of the high ones in the county. But still, when you think about for affordable housing, you should not be paying more than 30% of your gross household income on housing for it to be considered affordable. So you basically multiply your income by 3, and that's like the maximum price you should be paying for housing, or, you know, break it down to a monthly rental. And so that's pretty hard. So what you see happening in Carlsbad is the people that are currently buying the homes, which a single family home is, you know, the average price, say, is $600,000. It's actually a little bit higher than that, but say it's $600,000. So you actually need a gross household income of $200,000 a year. So if your average income is $87,000, like, who's buying those homes?
Yeah.
So you're saying they're mostly people that have probably sold somewhere else and that are bringing quite a bit of equity to that, or they're overburdened on their housing costs, so they're accepting loans and they're purchasing more housing than they can actually afford. So when you apply that to yourself, it's like, and you look at what is my gross household income, and I look at my housing costs, probably most people are overburdened with housing costs in San Diego in general.
I would say so.
In Carlsbad,
for sure.
Yeah, is probably worse than that.
Right.
Unless you were fortunate enough, like my husband and I, to buy back in the early 90s. We got lower price, and then our income went up.
Right.
It was a stretch then when we purchased, and we're like, well, we're going to do it, and all the family helped you with your down payment and getting you into that house. So luckily our incomes went up. But for anybody trying to get in the market
nowadays,
now,
it's tough.
Yeah.
Well, what's on the horizon then? I mean, as far as housing projects are concerned, is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
We hope there is. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is try to match up the job creation and the incomes that they have with a variety of product type, so that there could be more affordable products. So when you look at Carlsbad, about half of the homes now are single family homes. When we first started our program, it was a much larger percentage, and we didn't have a diversity of products. We didn't have condos, we didn't have apartments. We primarily had a community of single family homes. And to get that diversity is what we need to help with the affordable housing market. So we're starting to see more condos being built. We're starting to see more apartments being built, and that's housing policies that the city has put in place to try and get that, that larger diversity of products, so that we can try to address some of this. Will we ever be totally successful? It's hard to say. San Diego is a popular place to live. Land costs are high. We're starting to see less land available, so you're moving more towards infill development. Infill's not necessarily cheaper, to build. And so you're starting to see all of these forces, these market forces coming into play, making it more difficult to do. But what our hope is in our department is to keep at it. We keep working with the developers to get the housing for low income, try to work with them to build maybe smaller units that could be more affordable. Maybe everybody doesn't need that trophy house that's 6,000 square feet. Maybe we could get used to the idea that we could live in a 2,000 square foot house or less. And so it's like changing a lot of, culture and habits and expectations, all at the same time. So we're trying to let people know that if you want more affordable housing, you have to accept higher density housing, and then you're going to have to maybe accept smaller, smaller homes.
Living spaces.
Yep.
And here's the other issue too. So on top of all that, we talk about market forces, and there's something else in play which sort of messes up with market forces. There's a cap on how many housing units can be in the city of Carlsbad. So, per the general plan, there can be no more than 54,999 housing units in all of Carlsbad. Right now, there are 44,889. So at some point, Carlsbad will be built out, and they cannot build anymore. So you can't have a situation where you can remove an old single-family home that's on a big piece of land and put 4 units there. You won't be able to do that anymore. So at some point, there's going to be no more housing units, but they're still creating jobs. Viastat's building this huge facility right near where I live in Robertson Ranch. Thousands of jobs coming, which is fantastic. Where are they going to live?
That's a really good point. And so is there new construction going on? I mean, is there any, are there units being built right now or converted that could help?
We do have new construction going on, which is exciting to see. When we were kind of in the Great Recession, we didn't see much happening in terms of development. We have seen ourselves start to come out of that. Last year, though, we only still issued like 200 permits for new homes. Luckily, this year we're closer to about 1,000 units, and there is development going on. But you're starting to see smaller developments now, where Carlsbad used to be 2,000, 3,000 units at a time. Now you're starting to see smaller numbers, like less than 1,000. Maybe even like as low as 200 or 100. And so you're going more into the infill sites. We do have Robertson Ranch, which is under construction now, which is one of our larger pieces of property. Quarry Creek, which is another pretty large, all of those about 700 units total, and they both have affordable housing requirements for low income.
And those are both in the North Carlsbad area. So, really not much going on in the south,
right.
Mostly just in the north.
Yeah, southwest and southeast are smaller developments. You're seeing like the, 5s, the 10s, that kind of stuff where they took a smaller piece of property and maybe it was vacant or it had a single home on it and it's zoned with multifamily housing, so they're coming in and doing small condo projects. The village area of Carlsbad, which is our downtown area, those are pretty small projects, but we haven't seen land available in the village for a really long time because owners were holding on to it, and they had maybe commercial businesses on them that may or may not have been producing a lot of rent, but they didn't need a whole lot of rent because they didn't have a mortgage or anything on it. So now we're starting to see condos and mixed use coming in, but that's a very small number to get up to like the thousands that we used to be producing. So it's happening, and there is a lot of construction going on, which on the other side a lot of the residents don't like. And so when we talked about the cap, the housing cap, that was actually a voter initiative that it was in the mid-'80s that the voters of Carlsbad put out an initiative and said, we want to cap the number of housing units in our city. Didn't want to cap the amount of commercial or industrial or office, but we want to cap the number of residential units because we want to cap the total population because we like it less dense and less populated.
I wonder how they came up with 54,000 units then, because in the 80s, I can't imagine. I mean, I came here I moved here in 2005, early 2005, and at that time, people who lived in Carlsbad were like, yeah, I live way up in Carlsbad. Like it was, it was like way, way, way up there. So I can't imagine the 80s, them choosing the number 54,000. That seemed pretty generous, actually,
right?
For going back that far.
Well, and think about how many jobs are in Carlsbad, and the company didn't even exist in 2005. Viasat, and other companies, they didn't even exist. So how could they even have foreseen the need for that kind of housing?
Yeah,
they didn't. So you're right; it would have been generous.
Is there room for more units than this? I mean, will they even be able to get to this number?
We don't know. I mean, they're moving towards it, but it's slow. It's slowed way down because of just the land availability, the cost of land. That has all slowed down quite a bit. There's an expectation that we probably will hit that number. Currently, there's property in our general plan, in our housing element. There is land that would accommodate the building of all of these remaining units and to meet our obligation through these RHNA numbers, these Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers of 5,000. So we actually had to zone land to basically say, you can accommodate this amount of growth. So if you look at, we have about 11,000 units left, that's land to accommodate at least 5,000 of that. And then we held out, some, knowing that in the future we'd have to make some more land, available. But I think when they came up with the numbers, what happened in the early 80s is we had a boom in building. And so we were building like everywhere. And like I said, thousands of units at a time, commercial, industrial. And so, the residents were like, time out. Like, I don't want all of this, We were incorporated in, 52. I've been living here since 52 when I could go, all these vacant properties and walk my dog and take hikes. And now all these people are coming in and messing that up, for me. We have 3 natural lagoons, in the city. We have a lot of open space. Like 40% of our land is dedicated for open space and habitat preservation. And so you start looking at the land that is available, and they just started calculating at the densities that were in that time, what does it look like could be developed without taking away the rights of the private property owners, because they already have kind of that zoning. What could we cap it at and be reasonable? And so that's how they come up, with these numbers. Yeah, so it's like you back into the number.
I think it's reasonable. I think it's extremely generous, actually, that's the number. I'm just curious, so for the people who maybe want to live in Carlsbad or want to own a home in Carlsbad, I mean, what does the outlook look like? Or how does someone who maybe thinks that they can't afford it, how do they, get over that hump?
It's like some of it is just old-fashioned ways. You have family help, It's just like families are starting now to live together. So more of them are getting these larger homes, and there's more than one family that's living in them. We might have single-family homeowners that put on a second dwelling unit, or accessory dwelling unit, granny flat.
And those aren't included in the numbers.
Those
so
aren't
you
included.
can have those not be included in that cap number.
So that might be some way, and actually the state is making it easier for people to add on second dwelling units that aren't counted in density. They're not counted in our growth management cap. And so if you had some elderly parents that you wanted to move closer to you, and then you all help in making these mortgage payments, then they could live in the second dwelling unit, and they'd be right on your property, have their own, place. But we're going to have to continue to look at, higher densities as well, and again, try and change the mindset of what's acceptable in terms of, the size of a home, so that becomes more acceptable. It's not right now. We get a lot of lawsuits every time now that we go to approve a development from people that don't want development, and that adds costs, to producing those homes. And so trying to find that balance somewhere where everybody could kind of be happy, but we could still accommodate people, because you're not just having people, moving in to San Diego and Carlsbad. You're having growth within. People are still having children. We don't have any rules that say you can't, have more than 2 children. I mean, our household size in Carlsbad is only 2.5 on average. So they're not large households that are living in there, but they're small households living in large houses. So it's sort of like, how do we balance that and, change it?
I have 2 questions for you. First one, less controversial, more factual. What is the cost to construct a new unit in Carlsbad? I mean, is that, because that seems to be a hindrance in a lot of different places. What's the regulatory costs and, just sort of the stuff that builders have to go through to get a unit, up? What does that look like?
It's definitely increasing. So I was looking at some numbers of where we've been, so if we just take 1997, look at before, we were kind of coming out of a recession then and kind of moving into more development again. It was around $220,000 a unit to build. Typically your city costs, like fees and impact fees and infrastructure development and stuff, is about 10% of that cost. Most of the cost is really in the land and construction costs themselves, but then you have these other things that play into that. But over the years, sort of requirements throughout the state, not just Carlsbad, but have changed. Like we have new stormwater protection, rules. We have new admission. It's like when you're building, you know, like your carbon footprint, like looking at all of those, the clean, you know, clean energy. Yeah, and it's like all of these things that kind of come up and make the cost higher. So now we're well over probably like about 330,000 a unit to 330,000 to 350,000
just
a
to
unit.
build it.
Just to build it.
Think about how much a home costs in your hometown. And this is just to build the unit. Doesn't include the profit.
Okay, but to build per unit, it's about 350 grand.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
So you've seen, you've basically seen like $100,000 increase over the years to build, and you know, some of that comes from regulations, of course. Some of it comes from, you know, environmental review impacts that you have to mitigate. You know, if you have to put in a road to get to your house and it's going through habitat, you know, how do you preserve that habitat and also get the road in to build the housing? So there's a lot of things that come in to play there. And then over the years, really, coastal land has gotten more expensive to build. Like you think about years ago, it wasn't the prime real estate, because if you lived on the coast, you were more subject to the storms, you know, and washing out your house, flooding out your house or whatever. And now it's like the place to be, right? You want to live near the coast, you want to live within walking distance, you know, at the beach. Well, the private property owners, like, hey, we figured this out, we can sell our land for a lot. And then when we rezone it and increase the density on it, they can sell it for even, you know, more. So what helps with the affordability is somebody that's actually been holding land for quite a while, and you have a low land cost. You can actually get in, you know, for cheaper. So if you just look to our neighbor to the north, the Oceanside, they can still build housing in Oceanside for about $250,000 a unit. And so it's like their costs, their regulatory costs are pretty much about the same. But what happens is there's this differential in just the market forces on the land value, you know, and how do you make a difference on that land, because you want private property owners to benefit from market forces. Absolutely. Right? So, it's just like all these things that come together. So it's not like one thing you can point to. Like we could say, oh, get rid of all the city fees and all the regulations. Would it mean that the housing prices would come down? Probably not.
Probably not, because people will still pay it to be here, and it doesn't. And it's not just homes for purchase; it's also homes for rent too.
Well, it wouldn't in a hot market,
right?
But if the market normalized or got soft, then it would, right? Because then you'd have competition amongst the new construction versus the resale, and you know, if the new construction had more give, then they would give, right, to get the home sold, because. You know, new construction guys, builders, they're not interested in hanging on to houses. They're interested in those houses being sold before they're finished. Right. So I think in an up market that would be the case. But, you know, I think the regulatory costs are definitely a hindrance. Maybe not the solution, though, you know, maybe not the silver bullet to, you know, solve the problem. But at the end of the day, this is the case in every major real estate marketplace, right? Everywhere. If you look at New York, if you look at San Francisco, if you look at Vancouver, I think the same issues exist when houses start to get ridiculous. Los Gatos, you guys ever been there, south of San Francisco?
It's insane.
Ridiculous.
It's over $1 million for a teardown that you're just going to level it.
Completely absurd. So how do you, you know, combat that issue when there's people who can afford it? Like, hey, this is an amazing place. People who have money are going to want to come and live here.
Right.
Or like one of my neighbors in Del Mar, who has probably a $12 million house, and I don't even know who the person is. I've never seen them there. There's also those people, right? Tons of money. This guy must be the CEO of Bank of America or something. I don't know. How do you have a $12 million house that you're never at? But you know, there's people like that too who would just say, oh, you know, internationally too. I'll buy $1 million house in Carlsbad just because we might want to go to the beach one of these days. Right. There's that out there.
Absolutely.
So. It's not what it used to be. It is what it is. And what it is a very desirable place. And so what comes with that is people having to try to figure it out. Like you said, beg, borrow, and steal, whatever. Get your down payment together. Don't steal. Beg and borrow. And then, you know, you get your down payment together, get in to the marketplace, and then, you know, hope for the best. I think that's really the best thing that you can do if you ultimately want to be a homeowner. If you have the ability to do it, do it.
Right. Yeah.
Because in the long run, it should work out really well for you.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've seen generally is the prices hold. You know, they don't drop, huge amounts during a recession, and so it is a good investment, and that's what they tell you, most of the time is like that's the best place to invest your money is in property. Right? So,
I like to hear that.
Yeah.
Who told you that, Bryan?
Yeah. He just whispered it in my ear. But the other thing that I think is there's changing market forces too, that when you have a popular place like San Diego, Carlsbad, what we're starting to see now is the whole short-term vacation rental starting to have an impact, because property owners can make so much more money renting their units as vacation rentals versus month to month. And so we actually have people that are buying homes that are probably overpaying for them with the intent of using them as vacation
Some of these
rentals.
rents are huge.
Right.
Weekly rents are thousands of dollars.
Man, I gotta be honest. I'm getting sour with that whole market.
Yeah.
I really am, because it is, and it's fine. I get it's the evolution of what's happening, but Del Mar, they just said no. We're not allowing it.
Yeah.
Now, the Del Martians are the Del Martians, right? Like, they like things the old way. And I don't want to be one of them, even though I am one. But at the same time, like, I think I'm just over that. I know that's the future, and it's a great place, to make money. But as you said, people will overpay. It'll sort of artificially inflate values. It's very risky, even though people don't think it is. Extremely risky. The economy takes a hit, and all of a sudden people are going to stay at the Motel 6 instead, and you're going to be vacant. So now what?
And you're paying the mortgage still.
You're still paying the mortgage. So now what? Now I need to call Bryan. Oh, Bryan, I need to sell this thing. It's not renting, and I just want to be done with it. Well, I'm sorry, the market's down 100,000. That's why no one's renting it, because the economy's bad. So sure, you want to sell it. So I mean, I don't like it, and I think it does cause problems, because now it becomes all about investors. Again, the rich get richer, and you don't have housing for people to live in,
Right.
who actually work in the area and would like to live in the area. So I've slowly over that. I think just right now, I just finally crossed the threshold of I'm done. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of the vacation rentals. I know it's a great business opportunity. I get it. And like for people who want to own real estate, there's an amazing. It is. You can't argue with it. But me personally, I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. And this is one of the reasons. Usually people are like, well, you know what? I make great money.
Right.
I can own 5-6 places, and these are making me so much money.
Yeah.
I can buy the next one.
Right.
I can buy the next one. What's keeping from owning everything? I mean, at the end of the day, why doesn't these Wall Street funds? Why don't they just buy every house that's for sale?
Yeah.
What's keeping them from doing it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was my big concern in the crash, was that shoot, Wall Street's going to buy every house.
Well, but
They tried.
But they want to keep They want to be diversified a little bit too, in case the
Oh,
market
they're
turns.
still super diversified.
Right.
But I mean, if you're talking about being able to get the rents that we're discussing,
Yeah.
especially if you can mix in, let's say 20-25% of your portfolio is vacation rentals, the ones that are coastal. What Wall Street firm that has billions of dollars to invest would want to buy stocks?
Right.
They tried to buy all the houses. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
They were buying 1,000 at a time,
Right.
sight unseen.
Yep.
They were trying to buy all the houses. That was my greatest fear. Was that if Wall Street buys all the houses, then no one will ever get to own a home again, unless you're wealthy.
Right.
Not just well off, not just median income, wealthy. You would have to be wealthy in order to own a home, and if you didn't, you were paying rent to Wall Street.
Right.
And
And probably a high rent.
And they were going to set prices because they were going to own all the
That's
houses.
whatever the market would dictate at
Right.
that point.
That's right.
It's crazy thought. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of all the things that you guys are doing. So for people who are low income, and who, or let's say, what would you say, the low to moderate income, there's still opportunities,
Right.
right? What are those opportunities?
Well, for the low especially, we're focusing on creating more product that in the low and the very low, most of that is going to be rental product that they actually can afford. We're hoping, like by encouraging more higher density housing, that we can start to hit that moderate income, so we can get the prices at something that's a little bit more affordable for people to get in and use it as move-up housing. So maybe, the first 5 years or whatever, I own a condo, and then I get enough maybe equity, 5-10 years, whatever it takes, enough equity in it, then to move up to maybe a smaller, home. And I think that's what we're really trying to encourage the developers, is to think about that a little bit more when they're designing something. So we work with every developer that comes in with a housing project. Our office is working with them, and they come in and they say, planning says I can do this if I make you happy. And so I'm like, all right, well, this is what I would like to see to make me happy, and they don't they're not happy at the end of that conversation necessarily, but it starts to change that mindset as to where we need to be going for the future, really to be able to accommodate the workforce housing. We're creating jobs, but we're not really creating the housing that those jobs coming in can afford to pay, so they're going to outlying, cities, or they're driving from Temecula, or they're driving, some crazy commuter schedule. And so we're trying to really encourage that diversity of product, and we're seeing more of it. For a long time, it was really hard to get developers away from the single-family homes because that's what could be financed, because it's been successful in the past. And I had actually a lending institution that told me once, it's like, we just tell them, keep it simple, stupid. So like the KISS approach, so it's sort of like, if we funded this project before and it was successful and we got our money back, we want to see that same product again. So we have to change the minds of the lenders too, to say this other product can be successful. And so that's what we're really trying to do. And it's a balancing act, because there's still people that want single family homes. They don't want to live in condo complexes. They don't want to be parts of HOAs, although pretty much all the new development is in HOAs, unless you go and buy, down in the village or the barrio, Carlsbad area or something. So it's a struggle, and I don't think we even have the magic answer. It's just working at one project at a time, to try and make a difference.
We definitely appreciate your efforts up there, and appreciate you coming on today and sharing your wisdom with us. Great stuff. Any parting words, Mr. Carlsbad, about the market, what to expect, or if there are opportunities still out there?
There's always going to be opportunities. You guys got to find them. It's harder, right? And people want to live here, so it's always going to be desirable. It's always going to be more demand than supply. There are more jobs than there are homes being built. More jobs being created than homes being built. So I think, like what Debbie said, you got to save. You have to be creative in how you do it. But bottom line is, we have fantastic weather. Great jobs are here. I think it's always going to be desirable. You just got to bite the bullet.
Beg, borrow, but do not steal.
Do not steal.
Do not steal. Philippe Heller, sorry I didn't see your comments. He said, let builders build, that'll lower prices. Sorry I didn't see your comments, everybody got to them. We are out of time. I appreciate you guys paying attention and following us here on this page. We have more coming today. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Fantastic stuff for the Carlsbad community.